Well, hello, and welcome back. Oh, it's been a long weekend. I almost forgot how to stream. You know, it only takes 3 days to break a habit. It is super late, but I wanted to get back in this tonight. For those of you that have been watching, well, first of all, for those of you that are not actually watching live, you can check the comments and you may see an edited version of this so I don't babble at you forever and we get right into it. But for those of you that have been watching along and wondering where I've been, because it's been a few days, just had a long weekend. Had another project that I really needed to focus on, and so I eliminated everything else for a few days. But now I'm back at it, and you should be able to expect me on weekdays to be streaming again. Although I might change my schedule for Saturday just because I might need that extra day for some other things. So anyway, with that out of the way, tonight we are going to. Well, I'll just go ahead and roll the ditty and then and then and then say all what I need to say. Okay. Well, hello, and welcome back. So tonight what we're going to do is refactor some functions in our blog here. So let me bring that back up. So if you remember, the last time I think we added the ability to have nav. So now we can have this blog button and this contact button. Yeah, that's awesome. So we're pretty much getting close to complete in terms of having a fully functional blog and completely exhausting the limits of what you should ever do in a bash script, because scripts and applications are different on purpose. But anyway, we're going to refactor our bash script. We're going to put some functions in it. We're going to identify some of the code that is similar between what's creating our nav and what's creating our articles, and try to make something that is a little bit more generic, so that we have more manageable code. We're not growing more sections of copy and pasting, but we have a couple of functions. So that's what we're going to be doing. And if you are live, feel free to comment. I now have a third monitor, so I've got both the YouTube and the Twitch up, although I can't promise that I'm going to be able to manage between all three of these. But I do have that. And with that, I'll go ahead and get started. And if at any time, of course, two things. I recommend you go ahead and get over to gist.github.com and start taking your notes, because as you learn and as you're doing stuff, and you want to be taking notes, and these notes are going to turn into your blog. Hopefully maybe they already did, for some of you. But we want to get these notes so that they are a blog, so you're just capturing that reference material. And then if at any point in this you have that aha moment, go ahead and give it a like. And with all that babble out of the way, let's get to the grind here. So I don't even know if I can remember where the code folder was. Oh gosh, such a long time ago. Let's see here. Oh, I want to get into. All right, we're in Beyond Code. Oh, we didn't go into Beyond Code demo yet. Okay, Beyond Code demo, blog. Okay, cool. This is where we want to be. So let's just make sure everything works, because it's been, oh gosh, April 7th. That's forever ago. It's the 14th. It's 7 days since we worked on this. I can't believe it. And let's see, we've got a modified template. Okay, that's probably some stuff I was just goofing around with afterwards. Put the character set in there. Okay, so if we run this build script, and actually let's just run the local deploy. I think it was, scripts is what I called it, and then local deploy. So this is going to build whatever our blog is currently, and then push it out. And I just want to make sure that there wasn't any what we call bit rot, which is you come to a project after a couple of days, and it, the bits rot and it no longer works. It's always frustrating. Okay, so this looks like everything's working. I think one of the last things we did was make it so that, oh, whoops. Actually, let me go over here real quick. I need to, okay, be able to sign in there. All right, So this did work. We built the blog. It transferred over all the files. It only kept the files that we needed from the assets folder and from, I think we called it public or build. What do we call it? Is it the build folder? Yeah, it's the build folder. So we can remove the build folder and then we can rebuild and the build folder will reappear. And we've got that in our .gitignore so that build files don't clunk up our repo. We don't accidentally commit them. All right. And I'm actually going to move this because I'm leaning forward a bit here. So I'll move this so I can lean in and look at the screen closer because it's too far away. Okay. Now our build script. This is our meat and potatoes. I don't want to make the screen much smaller, but this is kind of hard to read. Okay, let's see what we've got here. So we're removing a temporary directory. First thing, we are creating something for nav in our temp directory, calling it index.md. Okay, we're going over articles. We're getting a list of articles. We remove our build directory. We also removed our temp directory, so our temp directories and build directories get removed at the start every time. The list of articles is built from a directory, and it'd be nice if we could rename this to articles rather than source. In fact, I'm going to do that now. I'm just going to do a search. I'm going to hit slash and then do a search for src and see if there's any other places. Yep. I'm going to replace that with articles. I'm going to replace this one. This is just a comment, but I'm still going to replace it all the same. Okay, and I'm just hitting N as I go through to go to the next, and then Shift N is previous. All right, so let's say I'm going to get MV source to articles. And I think because of the way that git log works with our blog, I'm actually going to need to commit this. So let's say I'm going to add that all. I'll just try to do a build. I'm not sure if it's going to work or not. No, and the reason it's not working is because our bash script is not super sophisticated, and when it runs a git command that doesn't give the expected output, it just kind of fails with a random error. But if we commit this, then that will go away. So change src to articles. Now if we build, yeah, works great. Okay, good. I was able to test that my change worked. Okay, let's go back to where we were. All right, we remove some stuff. We print all the articles for each article. We run all the build stuff on it. Okay, then we build a partial of the nav, and we build another partial of the nav, and then we rsync everything. So the first thing that I want to do is actually put this in a function, because these two are almost identical. So they're a really good candidate for a function. Things that are really good candidates for functions are when you have a few lines of code that are nearly identical, and also when you have loops. Those are areas where functions are going to come in handy. So this, let's see what we can do here. I'm gonna give this the temporary name of build nav, because it seems to be building nav. And I am going to make this a little bit smaller so everything fits on one line. And no, I'm not. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to make things fit on one line, or fit in the lines we need. So I'm just going to indent that right there. So we don't have to run a subshell on a single line. We can run on multiple lines. And let's see. We can split out long lines into multiple lines by using a backslash right before the new line there. Okay, so now we can at least read all of this at once. Let's put some comments in here too. All right. So what are we doing here? This looks like we're going to render the inner part of the page. So I'm just going to put a comment here. Render inner part of page. The meaningful part. The meaningful and different part. This all is related to contact, but we don't want this to only be able to run on contact. We want it to be able to run on anything. So I'm going to, let's move this up to the top. Now Bash is a little bit weird. You're going to see most languages, a function can take arguments. With Bash, it's not so. What we actually do is we give numbered arguments. So if I want to call this bash function with build nav, and then I want it to render contact from nav, the two things that I want to pass in probably are nav and contact. So we're going to run over the nav directory and we're going to get the contact file. So we'll pass two arguments, and the way that we'll receive the arguments is we'll do my dir equals the number 1, because arguments don't start at 0 in bash. And we need to, when we're in a function, our variables need to be declared locally. So let's go ahead and do this. All right. So that's looking good. And now we need to update this. Now we have to use double quotes because we're using variables. But I should be able to do my dir and then my article. There we are. And that's getting a bit long, so I'm going to indent it like that. Okay, so all we did was replace what we had statically with something that we're generating dynamically using variables. There are a couple different philosophies. What we're following right now is called dry, which is don't repeat yourself. When you see that you've got a lot of stuff that is very similar, you want to group it together so that it's easier to manage, so that if we need to make a change to how articles render, we don't have to go change it in 5 different places. We just change it in one place. But what we followed first was the principle called AHA, which is avoid hasty abstractions, meaning write things out a couple times first and learn how you're going to use the code, and then start to add abstractions to it. Because the more abstractions you have, the harder your code is to understand. So you want code that's easy to understand, and when you start using functions, there's a trade-off, because now, rather than the code executing literally line by line as written in the script, we're going to build up some functions, and then down towards the bottom, we're going to call a function, and then it's going to go run that function with whatever those variables are. And it can be a little bit more difficult to read when you've got a bunch of variables than it is when you just have the literal strings of /nav /contact, for example. But I'm just pulling that out for now. And I think there's going to be more to come with the changes here. Let's see. This is all looking good. All right, so I think this is good, and we don't need to call this build nav anymore. I think we just call this, let's call it render page. because we're passing in nav. And the reason we're passing in nav is because I guess if we were truly following avoid hasty abstractions, I would have just had it called build nav or render nav, and I would have just passed in the name of the article. Or not the article, but the name of the page that's being rendered. However, I do know that we want these pages to be similar, the nav pages and the article pages, and so I'm just kind of starting early on building out how that's going to work. So that's why we're passing in nav there. But I'm going to double check. Is there anything else that has nav in this function? No. Is there anything else that has contact in this function? No. Okay, just searched through, didn't see it. All right, that looks good then. So I'm going to go ahead and exit out of here and build. And if all goes well, we should see that everything builds, and it looks like everything did build. I don't see it print. I'm going to go ahead and remove the build directory and then run the build script again. And then just double check that in the build directory we have, okay, we have contact and we have index. That's great. Okay, so the next thing that I want to do is I actually want, maybe, do I want to render these out separately? We'll see. We'll see. I think I do want the articles to be under an article page. Actually, I know what I want. I don't really like it when a page ends in .html. I want those to be directories. For sure. Absolutely for sure. And I don't want them to conflict with the main nav, so I do want it to be /article/intro to mastering markdown/. So we'll get there. First, this bit that we just turned into a function, I believe was identical to this bit. Yeah. I could see one problem with what I just suggested, though. We'd have to have a special case for index that is different from the others. Because if we were to change this in the way that I just suggested, we would end up with an extra directory for index file. So we'd have to test what's the name of this thing. So do I want to do that? Out file. I'm gonna do, whoops. We should probably do all of these should be local. I forgot to update that. We don't have created yet. We're going to get back to that. And honestly, I'm so tired, I'm not going to be able to get through all this. So we're going to have to cut it short after I create a function for rendering the nav. And we'll come back tomorrow and do the rendering of the pages. Okay. So, yeah, I'm not going to do that change I suggested yet. But I think everything here was the same. One thing I like to do, I just hit DD to cut that, and then I'm going to hit P to paste it up here. I just like to kind of reconstruct things and see if as I reconstruct them, they end up being the same except for the variable that I'm changing, just to double check, especially when I'm coming back to code where it's been a while since I've looked at it. It's been a few days. Okay, so this line's exactly the same. See. So those two lines are the same, delete it. Those two lines are the same, delete it. Those two lines are the same, delete it. And these two lines, what's different is we give a directory and we give an article. Okay. So why was that nav and not temp, I wonder? Oh, because we're reading in from the source directory. Okay, got it. Okay, I understand where this is going. We don't have a nav directory for the index. That's fine. But I do kind of want to put the index under a nav directory. So let's go move that. Do we have? Is it index? No. Where is the index? Oh, we build the index completely dynamically, don't we? Okay, let's change that. So do we have, we've got a nav directory, right? We do. Oh, wait. I'm going to go back up to the top of the file here. Oh, I see. I see. So we copy over, because we're building this out as we go with the index directory, because we're going to list the articles in it. So index directory is a little bit special from the others. So we may, our function, we might have to have more than one function because we're going to need to have a way to handle index special. Because in most pages, like the contact page, we're not building out a list of all the articles and putting in there. So index is very special for us. Okay, let me go back down here. Let's see what we can do. Okay, and where was the my partial? Reading in the template. Reading in the created at, building, and deleting. So what were we doing here? My partial was, that's the part that I just deleted, that was this. And that's where it's reading in from the temp directory. Okay. So in this case, it would be like that. Okay, so it's going to get the partial out of the temp directory, which is where we've built up the index file. Okay, this is probably still going to work, but we're going to have our nav, we're going to have our index, and they're going to be different, and that's fine. Okay, so get rid of this, because if we look at this, I'm going to go back up here. My article, we're already covering that. That variable's already taken care of. Local, my created, that variable's already taken care of. Okay, now let's look at these two commands. I'm going to cut that and then paste it right here. And just kind of look and see. Do these look to be the same? They look to be exactly the same. Okay, so I don't need that directory. Okay, I'm going to look at this one at the end here. Does this look to be exactly the same? It is. All right, I don't need that line. No special conditions. So what I'm doing here is I'm just trying to make sure, because sometimes when we copy a function or we copy a couple lines in one place and we copy a couple lines in another place, sometimes we change more than one thing. So whenever you start to refactor, it's always good to kind of look at what you were doing and make sure it matches up with what you want to do now. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to just bring all this together. Okay, those two lines are exactly the same. These two lines are exactly the same. These two are exactly the same. Okay, good. So this is an appropriate abstraction for building the contact page and the index page, because those functions were indeed exactly the same, except for the directory that they're building from and the name of the article. So with that, I'm actually going to call that good for the night. Let's go ahead and we're going to remove the build directory. So there's nothing there. We'll get an error. And then we're going to run the build directory again. And then I should be able to see the files are there. We still have our contact and our index file. Nothing was broken. Let me go ahead and run the local deploy script. Okay, refresh, make sure the page is still up. Oh, that's not good. Oh, that's not good at all. Unintended consequence. So even though we didn't technically edit any of the articles, because we had them in a different directory initially, and we changed what directory they were in, that counts as an edit. So moving the articles from one directory to another, as far as Git is concerned, counts as an edit. What's concerning about this, though, is that it also changed the creation date. So I'm not too upset that the edit date changed, but the creation date changed. And the reason for that is when you move something from one folder to another, as far as the Git database is concerned, it sees them as completely separate entries. It doesn't just say, oh, some metadata about this file changed. It says, oh, this is a new file that happens to be the same in terms of its content. It happens to be a copy of an old file. Okay. So yeah, so we have that problem we have to live with. Unless we go back and edit the history, all of our blog dates have changed. So this is something that we might want to get right from the get-go in the future. Okay, so with that, yeah, I think we're good to do a get diff, take a look at what we did. All right, so we just took a bunch of lines and we turned it into a function because they were identical aside from a couple of variables that we were able to put in. And then I'm not going to worry about this. I'll go ahead and, no, I'm not going to commit that tonight. All right, so let me add my build script. And we are, let's see, what was this? Refactor build.sh to use a common function for building nav items. Building similar pages. Let's call it that. All right. And when I do a get push, the server's going to do a deploy. It looks like the server deploy was great. Let's just check and see that the web page is still there, and it is. Great. Okay. Well, I think that is it for the night for me. If you enjoyed this, give it a thumbs up. If you got any comments or questions, leave them. And tomorrow we'll get the real work done when I've got a clear head on my shoulders again. I hadn't streamed in a couple of days because of other things that were going on, and it only takes 3 days to break a habit. And if I didn't do it tonight, would have broken my nice track record. So I just needed to do it at all costs. So with that said, adios.